Okay, here we are again. Welcome back, everybody. This is the We Quit Booze Brothers, which is a podcast where we try to have honest, no fluff conversations about our various experiences of quitting alcohol. And with me, as always, is my brother Matt. Hello, Matt.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we are back again after a short break again. Mark was over in Paris, and as we always say with this podcast, we do it for the joy and the fun, and hopefully that it's helpful to people. And we do have lives and routines, and occasionally we have to miss out, but. Hopefully you're all back to and listening, and we've got a cool topic for you today, something very interesting. I think it's something you'll all relate to. So without further ado, I shall hand back to Mark, who will introduce
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, thanks. So we missed a week, everyone, but there you go. I'm sure life continued. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't have been quite as good without a Booze Brothers
I can
podcast.
imagine there were, a
Yeah,
few,
but
a
hey,
few, a
but
few
hey.
tears and people.
And it's a good segue actually into the topic and the conversation that we wanted to have today because so I went to Paris this week to go and spend some time with my brother, who some of you may know. He's on this podcast.
Right.
So he's you can see his face. And it was lovely. So my wife and I traveled over to Paris and we had a really nice week. The weather was fantastic. We
Amazing.
a load of stuff. We what I think we did about 20,000 steps a day. So we did lots of
Easily.
walking. It was good. Matt, the great thing about going to a city with somebody who knows it and lives there is that you get to sort of you go to all the cool places. You don't necessarily go to the obvious places, and that was really fantastic. But it was one of the morning. I just so we stayed in a hotel, and I don't know if you're like me. Like every time I sleep in a hotel, I always sleep okay, but I don't. I sort of wake up intermittently through the night. It's almost like my body, my subconscious is saying, "This is not your normal
Yeah.
bed.
Where are you?
Where are you? What's going on?" And one of the mornings, I woke up and we'd had a big day the day before. We'd done a lot of walking. The weather was very hot. And I woke up feeling slightly dehydrated and a little bit, I had a bit of a headache, and would have been about 4:30 in the morning. And it was almost like my body woke me up. And I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It would have just been that, we'd had a long day. Like I say, the weather was hot, probably hadn't drunk
Yeah.
enough water. I think we
You're
had
in the
quite
sun all day.
yeah, we had quite a heavy, rich French dinner that evening, which was absolutely delicious. But all of that, sort of adds up. And I woke up and I felt this sort of headache, dehydration, and one of my first thoughts was, "Oh my God, this I remember this feeling. This is a bit like a hangover." Not as bad. No, not even close. It's minor league compared to that feeling of that hangover. And I suddenly remembered that hangover feeling. The I used to get this headache at the back of my head. It was always in the back of my head. It was this deep sort of almost had a metallic type of feel to it, if I could describe it. And my heart would be sort of pumping harder than usual. There would be dehydration. And I just remember thinking, fucking hell, I used to start the day like that. That's how I would start the day. And then broadening this out a little bit. So the topic of the sort of broad conversation that we wanted to have was what were the trigger events? What were the aha moments that led us to
Mm.
finally quit drinking alcohol? And just let's sort of just park that backdrop of that sort of throwback to how it felt to have a hangover and what that was like to start every day feeling really compromised, feeling tired, feeling overwhelmed by the world, having that sort of hangover feeling. And I remember when I was drinking, weekends were always the time when I would sort of just let loose, and it was a free pass for me. And we lived in America at the time. We lived on a community, a neighborhood community there, and opposite my house was the sort of community swimming pool where everybody could go and use. And in front of the swimming pool was a parking lot. And our kids went to school, and we were very fortunate that the school bus would park right opposite our house in the morning. So it wasn't exactly a long way to go to take the kids. We would just walk them over the road, stand in the parking lot where the swimming pool was, the bus would arrive, kids would get on. And I would never ever go out on a Monday. Monday mornings, I never went. I always felt tired, hungover, really under the weather from the weekend's excesses. And I remember one time looking out the window, just peering, peeping out at all of the parents laughing and playing with the kids. And there was a guy, there were guys and, men and women, mums and dads. And a lot of the dads I knew, a lot of the dads were friends of mine. And I remember just this one particular time thinking, why is it that everyone else seems to be just okay on a Monday morning? That Monday mornings don't seem to impact them. They've had a weekend, and I've had a weekend. They've had probably some drinks, but I'm hiding away. I'm hiding from the world. I can't go out and face them because I've had all this to drink. And the truth for me is that this was that I would say that was an aha moment, but that was certainly those are the sorts of things that would trigger me. They were the sorts of things that sort of I'm really starting to question me. I'm really starting to question my life. And I'll come on to the aha moment in a minute because I'll sort of want I'll hand over to you to sort of pick up the thread. But two things really just to start this conversation off. One, that sort of sudden reminder of what it used to be like to drink, to start every day on the back foot, and just the other sort of as a sort of as an all-encompassing example of the sort of shit that you deal with when you are drinking too much. That sort of, if you like, there was this, I guess, I was observing the world through the lens of somebody feeling the shame, the tiredness, the anxiety, the overwhelm of a weekend's excess, thinking, what's wrong with me? What the fuck is going on here? So I'll leave it there for now. I'll let you pick up the thread, but there's so much more to say as always.
Yeah,
That's just
there really is, and as always, when you start, I'm starting to think, yeah, no, there's that as well, and that as well, and we try to keep these not too long because we know that you all have busy lives, and we don't want to prattle on for ages, but. Yeah, I like you. I wanted when I thought about this topic, I didn't want to go into the obvious, which I had a rock bottom moment. There's a video on that. Go back and find it. Listen to. I think it was one of the most popular videos, which so by all means, go and watch it. But I think I had lots of aha moments really building up over the years. One for me, and I can kind of remember the day. And this is, maybe me being, I can't think of the word, but it's just one for me. This isn't for everybody, but I was always pretty slim, certainly in my adult life. Up until probably my sort of mid-30s onwards. And I remember one time just sitting down to put my socks on and catching sight of myself in front of the mirror and just seeing kind of what I'd become, just the look of sort of, I was hungover, the look of bloatedness, I was overweight, and I just remember thinking, fuck, you look like a mess, and I knew why. It wasn't because I was eating too much junk food. It was because I was boozing. It was because of the drink and the lifestyle that I was living. And that was a big, kind of moment. And another moment as well was, or moments were, drinking more and more on my own. And you justify it when you're when you have alcohol issues. You normalize it. You think, oh, I deserve it. I'm being, almost like, you almost build up this bullshit story that is kind of sophisticated. Here I am having my bottle of wine. I've had my day at work. Yesterday my wife's gone out, but that, and it's like, I can tell you this right now: people who don't have an issue with alcohol do not drink on their own. They wouldn't drink a bottle of wine on their own. They wouldn't. Our father, who is not in the category that we kind of fell in, I don't think he's ever sat at home, opened a bottle of wine, and drank the whole thing on his own. I don't think he has. And he liked to drink. Do you know what I mean? He was a social drinker. Yeah, but he would have three or four and then stop. On a big night out. Or, he never. Yes, he had fun. Yes, I've seen him. Lively, but he wasn't. It's not someone who needed to moderate. And as I've said before, those people who, uh, you know, don't think about, who don't need to moderate, don't think about moderation. It's only the people who need to.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then probably final thing, just right now, is one thing I used to do all the time. I'm sure you can relate to this, but when I was coming home from work, I would be thinking constantly about how I could convince my wife that it would be a good idea to drink again. I'd be thinking, well, we drank last night, but so how am I gonna position this? And I'll be thinking, well, what I'll do is I'll say, I tell you what, why don't we have a drink tonight because it's Wednesday or because it's Tuesday? Then we won't drink again until the weekend, But I bring the weather into play. I would go, oh, it's quite a nice day, or I'll come up with some crap. Oh, I had a really really busy day, or and I'd be constantly thinking about, how can I position bringing drinking in, because she was the voice of reason at times. She would be the one saying, well, we drank last night. Surely
Mm.
I don't want to drink tonight, but I would want to. So I'd be thinking, I'd be saying, oh, well, that's bullshit. I'd bring some nice bottle of wine home and go, oh, someone recommended this to me at work and I saw they had one left. I thought I'd take it. And all the excuses, all the, and these just are those moments where you just think,
Mm.
when you analyze it, it's not
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, the drinking on your own one is a really good point, actually. I've not thought about because obviously I used to do it, and I think you're right. If you are drinking on your own, my wife would never drink on her own. You're right. Our
Oh,
dad wouldn't do it. That is. I hadn't really thought about that before. That how
yeah, and we're not
do
talking about it's a sunny day
no,
and you've been on a
no,
walk and you've stopped at a pub and you think, oh, I'll
no.
have half a beer or something. I'm talking about you're going to open a bottle of wine and the
Yeah,
chances are you're going to finish that
exactly.
bottle of wine.
Yeah, and I used to wait until everybody had gone to bed at the weekend. I used to love that. Was to me that felt like a golden time when everybody had gone to bed and I could drink on my own. And I always justified it to myself. I work hard. I'm under a lot
Mm.
of stress. This is my time. I get very little time on my own. And so that leads me to the sort of final point, really. That this was that sort of what was the aha moment that led us to stop drinking? What was the sort of final thing? And I think in truth, it was a build up. You had your rock bottom moment. That was the sort of straw that broke the camel's back.
It was. It
I
was the
talk about I didn't have a rock bottom moment, but I had multiple mini rock bottom moments,
Mm.
lots of and like peering out of the curtains at the world on a Monday morning that seemed to be operating normally and having fun with their kids and able to start the week on the front foot was one of them. But the final point was, I'll go back to the trip to Paris. We when we returned home, my wife and I, because we'd seen you all week, we were traveling back on the Thursday. We had a Eurostar train from the Gare du Nord in Paris back to London. And I remember driving back in the taxi and we were just reflecting on the week we'd had and all the things that we did. And it was one of those moments you get when you stop drinking, when you think and you realize and you become really appreciative. And I just turned around to my wife and I said, I'm so grateful that I don't drink anymore. I'm so, so grateful because I said, just think of all the things we've done this week. Just think of the amount that we've covered, the ground that we've covered. we've had a lovely week. I'm looking forward to, I'm not arriving at the station feeling absolutely hanging from a week of alcohol, which is exactly what would have happened if we were still drinking.
10
We
years ago.
we would have been out every night. We would have
Mm,
drunk during the
without question.
day.
Without question.
We would have been drinking at lunchtime. We would have gone to restaurants, and I would have arrived back at that station feeling depressed because alcohol makes you feel bluesy. It gives you, it's a depressant. I would be feeling that, that like that, the party's over feeling, that awful.
Yeah.
I used to get it on a Sunday afternoon, which is one of the reasons why I carried on drinking on a Sunday. That sort of, oh, the party's over. And my aha moment was this. My aha moment was partly aided by a book that I read that I'll mention. But what I realized is that by not drinking, I wasn't actually giving up anything. I wasn't giving up anything. I suddenly clearly saw the myth that is alcohol, the myth that society, that culture, that conditioning had created that said, this is the way you live your life. The way you live your life and have fun is by you accent and you, what's the word I'm looking for? It's yeah, it's sort of not bookended, but it's sort of the footnote to the way that you live your life is through alcohol. And my aha moment was that when I realized that the awful tax that your soul pays when you drink, peering through the curtains kills your soul. Looking at the world of people who don't drink, lying to your wife about reasons why you think you should drink, excuses you've come up with for we should
Mm,
drink tonight, kills your soul. you know, Meeting other people the day after a really heavy night and chewing through the day, the anxiety when you're dealing with stressful situations, which is just magnified through alcohol, kills your soul. And I realized my aha moment was fucking hell, the tax that I pay for drinking is too fucking high. And by
mm,
not drinking, I'm freeing myself from this. I suddenly realized that by not drinking, the fun that I would have on trips to Paris with you, the variation in my life, the projects that I could do, the relationships that I could form, not just with other people, but with myself, becoming more comfortable with the person who I am. Because when you drink, you're juggling with two different types of people. There's the guy that you pretend to be or girl that you pretend to be when you're drinking. And then there's the person who you are when you're recovering from alcohol. And then there's that sort of. I remember Tuesday afternoons was the day that I'd start to feel normal again after the weekend and just soul searching, thinking, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of what it does to me, but then would carry on doing it. So the big aha moment for me was when I realized I wasn't giving up anything, but I was gaining everything. And if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you'll know that we both turned our lives around. That
mm.
I went from mid 40s, fat, broke, low level anxiety slash depression to fit, healthy, not fat, financially much, much better. And yeah, the world is a much easier, happier. I won't get too deep and meaningful, but you get one fucking life. It's a blessing that we have it. You know, there's joy and there's wonder everywhere. Sitting on a bench in Paris with your son Oliver because he just bought some weird Japanese drink and he couldn't figure out how to open it. And the two of us just sitting there laughing and trying to figure this thing out is pure joy. It's
Mm.
happiness. I wasn't hungover. I wasn't thinking, this is dull, this is boring. When can we start drinking again? So really it's coming to terms with you think that drinking is fun. You think that it's the way that you have fun. But actually, it fucking isn't. It fucking isn't. it's the tax that you pay is too high. And that for me was the aha moment. And that continues to be my aha moment. That's the thing that keeps me away from it.
Yeah, that's it's so interesting because the point I wanted to end on was pretty much that, which was, one big aha moment for me was seeing other sober people and seeing the life they led. And that
Mm,
pushed me into watching the podcast. I've always said on this, we've always said on this that, if we can help, that's great. But there are others who help. There was, at the time I was watching Craig Beck, I was watching Kevin O'Hara. These guys were leading the way, and what they said was inspirational to me. And it was kind of like looking up, and you'd given up before as well, and seeing, God, these people have really enriched lives, really wonderful lives. And the one thing that I am the most fearful of, and I'm the most fearful of giving up, is the one thing that can actually bring me the most in my life, which is getting sober. And isn't it mad? I was thinking about it yesterday. Is that is, in my opinion, the number one problem that people face with alcohol is that fear of losing things, and
yeah,
it is the absolute opposite.
yeah.
You gain so much.
No
So
one believes you. No one believes you when they're drinking. What do you do? How do you socialize? But you turn pain into pride. You
yeah,
turn pain into pride. You live a
yeah,
life, you will be proud of yourself for being one of the few people that's strong enough and disciplined enough to stop doing something that most people can't stop doing. And it opens up a world which is, yeah, it feels limitless in lots of ways. So, yeah.
it does. It does.
All right.
Cool. Good place to end, I think.
Okay, brilliant. Well, let's leave it there. As always, please share, like, comment. There's a lot we could do to improve this channel.
Lighting for starters. I might
Like,
stand in the dark here pretty much, but we're amateur. We do it for the love of it, really. And if we can help, we can. Well, why would we not keep going?
yeah, it's not about production quality. It's just two normal people talking about their experiences and trying to make that as relatable as possible. So it seems to help. We get great comments and feedback. So on that basis, we want to try and help as many people as possible because I feel like this sort of content does help. So yeah, do us a favor, subscribe, share, like whatever it is that the algorithm at YouTube responds better to. That'd be great. But as for now, as I always say, it's a good never quit quitting. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him. Cheers.